Hi everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be reviewing the Redmi Note 8T, which is also basically the same as the Redmi Note 8, but it has a few improvements. It's the European version of that phone. I've been using it for about a month now. I mean, it's been out for a couple months, so I have been using it quite a lot, and I'm going to show you what it can do. This phone is only $180 in the US. I bought it for about 150, 160 pounds. It is ridiculously cheap for what you get. I almost cannot believe how cheap it is. This line of phones, the Redmi Note phones, have always been very good value. I've had the previous one, the Redmi Note 7, which is actually on the floor right here. This is Redmi Note 7. So I am a fan of these phones and I got the latest one and I'm so impressed by it. It's not perfect. It's not going to replace your iPhone, or it's not going to be a flagship phone in terms of raw power. But to be honest, there's not that much difference between something that costs, say, $700 and this $200 phone. So let's go into it right now and see what this can do. It features a 6.3-inch IPS LCD display with a resolution of 1080 by 2340 and a pixel density of 409 ppi. It features a plastic frame with Gorilla Glass at the front and a splash-resistant coating. It features a pretty impressive 4 rear camera setup with 48 megapixel f1.8 camera, an ultra-wide 8 megapixel camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. It can also shoot 4K video at 30 frames per second and 1080p video at 120 frames per second. The front camera is 13 megapixels f2.0, powered by a Snapdragon 665 processor, which is a fairly new processor, only released late last year. It's a slight improvement on the past processor, but not by much. You have a choice of 3, 4 and 6 gigabytes of RAM and 32, 64 and 128 gigabytes of storage. I've got the 4 gigabyte 64 memory version. Although it does also have a micro SD card slot, so you can upgrade that internal memory. The battery is 4000 mAh and comes with fast charging capabilities. It takes about 30 minutes to charge the phone halfway to full power from zero. It features a rear-mounted fingerprint sensor and also NFC, which is pretty rare for a phone at this price range. So those are the specs, but what is it like in reality? Let's have a look. I've been using it for about a month now. It's not been my main phone, but I've been using it just enough, to see what it can do. Now, first and foremost, let's talk about the design of the phone. I actually think it's pretty damn good looking. I mean, I really like this color, this kind of gradient from white to slightly darker blue. When I opened the box, I really expected it to be a very cheap looking and very, just a cheap looking phone. I didn't expect it to be attractive because it is literally under $200. Back 10 years ago, if you ever bought a phone that was under $200, it would just look awful. But to be honest, it looks great. I mean, it does have a plastic frame, but even that is kind of very shiny. They've made it look metal. They've made it look premium. The screen is very bright. It's an LCD screen with a 1080 by 2340 resolution, which is pretty much the same as most LCD phones now, and that is very high resolution. More expensive phones use AMOLED, which provides better color technology, better depth and better vibrance, but doesn't allow for such high resolution. So text, icons, numbers on the Redmi Note 8T are going to be very sharp, but they're going to be the same as pretty much all other LCD screens. The one thing I would say about the design of the Redmi Note 8T, which I'm not sure why they did it, they seem to have just put the word Redmi everywhere. I mean, if you look here, it says Redmi there, and it says it here at the bottom. I'm just not quite sure why that was necessary. I don't need a constant reminder of the type of phone that I have. I already know. So that was kind of pointless. It does kind of take something slightly away from the design, but apart from that, I really like it. 4 cameras at the back, which is pretty impressive. This array of cameras does stick out of the body quite a lot, so when you put it on a flat surface, it is going to wobble a little bit. It's not going to lay flat on a flat surface. It features a teardrop notch, so it doesn't get in the way too much of the screen. That does mean that there's only 1 camera at the front though, so you do have to put up with that, but I think it's worth it. I've never really seen the need for multiple cameras, selfie cameras, so yeah, that's fine with me. So this is the maximum brightness of the screen. I don't know how well it's coming through in the camera now, but I think it's really bright, really quite responsive, as you can see. I mean, it's as good, like I say, I always review these cheaper phones and I find them basically as good as phones that are twice or three times the price, especially in terms of the screen technology and in terms of how, you know, responsive they are. It's all the same, so I really don't understand why people need to spend $1,000, £1,000 on a phone when can do basically the same thing. So for the design, I'm really impressed. I think it is a gorgeous phone, especially for the price. It's better looking than some much more expensive phones. Now, in terms of raw performance, the phone is okay. It's not the best. I mean, again, it is a very cheap phone. Do not expect it to be able to run 9 apps at the same time, play the highest quality games in the highest resolution. It's not going to be able to do that. It features a Snapdragon 665 processor, which compared to the last version is not a massive upgrade. The only real difference between the processor in this phone and the processor in the last Redmi Note 7 is the fact that the battery lasts a bit longer. It doesn't use up as much battery life. So what you're going to find is that the phone can play basically all the games in the App Store. I've tested it with some very challenging HD 3D games, which, you know, are going to test the phone's capability to render graphics. But I do notice that the textures aren't the best. I'm pretty sure if you loaded these games up with a more powerful phone, they would load better textures. That's not really a problem for me because, I mean, phones, then the type of games we play on phones are type of games that are really enjoyable on a phone, do not require very high definition textures. But what matters most for me is that the games run smoothly, and for the most part they do. Maybe a little bit of lag if I'm running multiple apps, maybe a little bit of stuttering at the start of the game, but apart from that, the games run really well. You can play PUBG. I played PUBG on this as well, and it loads to the maximum settings, but they really optimized that game so that basically any phone can play it, which is part of the reason why it's so popular. It seems that the CPU is quite powerful or quite efficient, whereas the GPU maybe is a little bit weaker. It's not going to load the best graphics, but in terms of just usability, it's very smooth, very responsive. It seems that the graphical capabilities of this phone, so the GPU, is fairly average compared to phones like mid-range phones. I would say that this is really priced at the lower end, but compared to mid-range phones. Okay, so let's talk about these cameras, because this is definitely the flagship feature of this phone. I mean, 4 cameras in a phone that costs $180 is pretty impressive, yes, but do they actually work? Is there any point of having this many cameras? Well, I've gone out and tested how well these cameras work, and let's just have a look, shall we? So when you open up the camera app, you'll see that you have 3 options for which kind of zoom or which kind of angle kind of camera you want to use. So it starts off with just ×1, which is the normal lens. You can press a little dot at the bottom. There's 3 dots, so you press the other one, it zooms in ×2, and then you can press the one to the far left, and it's 0.6, so that's the ultra wide angle. Now each one has kind of different quality. They're not all going to be the same. The standard lens, just the normal angle lens, has the best quality, shoots very well in daylight, shoots very good colors, great dynamic range. In darker areas it's going to be a little bit noisy. I mean, in fine details it's going to look all smushed together, but for a camera that's 180, it does just as well as other phones which are 2 or 3 times the price. Now the wide angle lens is not too bad. It's great for group shots, great for scenery, great for landscapes, that kind of stuff, but it does sacrifice some quality. It's going to be a little bit more noisy. You are definitely going to not want to shoot in low light with this camera because it doesn't quite capture as much as the standard lens. As for the zoom lens, ×2 zoom, now this is a digital zoom. It's not, you know, a mechanical one. You're obviously going to see more fuzziness. It's going to be slightly less detailed, and you're going to see more pixelation in this zoomed photo. But all in all, I'm fairly impressed with what these cameras can do. Now the macro lens, it's probably the weakest one of all. I mean, it's only 2 megapixels, and it does allow you to zoom right in and focus very closely into a subject. But is it really worth it? No, because it's just very weak, very fuzzy. You know, it looks like a camera that's made 10 years ago. The depth sensor does well to blur the background and to create a very crisp subject in the foreground. Now, of course, this is a 48 megapixel camera. However, take that with a pinch of salt because it's not really 48 megapixels. It takes a 12 megapixel photo and upscales it. I did take some 48 megapixel photos. I don't really see a massive difference. Here's one of me at the gym. And yes, I do go to the gym. How dare you? I know I'm very skinny. There's something there. So this is a 48 megapixel image, and the idea is that you should be able to zoom in on this and crop it out and not lose much quality. I don't see that working too well. It works a little bit, but you may as well just use the normal camera. You're very rarely going to need to crop so much into an image and leave out most of it. The selfie camera, well, I'll take a selfie right now and let's see, shall we? There we go. It's 13 megapixels, so you have enough data there to create a fairly sharp image. It has some, beautification options, all that kind of stuff if you're into that. I'm obviously already perfect in every way, so I don't need to use those options. What I would recommend is that you use night mode. Now this opens the shutter for around 2 or 3 seconds and allows for a much deeper, much more dramatic image. It's not necessarily super realistic, but specifically in low light conditions when there's lots of artificial lights, it's going to work really well. So overall, I like the cameras. It's a very impressive setup for the price of the phone. Now, the biggest issue I have with Xiaomi phones is the operating system. I don't really like MIUI at all. I put up with it because I like everything else about the phones, but it's just not super, I don't know. I don't like how there's no way to see all your apps in like a tray. They don't break them down into different sections. I don't really like the menu system for the settings. Some things are in weird places. The battery life is actually really, really good. I can charge this fully to 100%. Play some games, watch some videos, watch YouTube, and in a day it will probably be about halfway or maybe up to 40% left on the phone. So for battery life, it's actually one of the best phones I've had for the past 2 or 3 years. It has an IR blaster. It allows you to control some infrared things. It lets you be able to, use it as a remote control for your TV. What it does feature, which is impressive and is useful, is NFC. So you can use this to make payments. You can do contactless payments, set it up with your bank, set it up with Google Pay, that kind of stuff. And you can, tap it and use it as a contactless card, basically, which again, for the phone at this price range, is super impressive. I don't know if you remember the Poco phone F1, that's about 1.5 years or year old. That was an amazing phone, probably my favorite ever phone from this company or from a Chinese phone, but it didn't feature NFC and it was about $100 more expensive than this. So the fact that they've managed to creep that in there is very good. God damn it, I forgot to talk about the video. This phone can also shoot video, obviously. I completely forgot about that. I have shot a little bit of video. I don't tend to use my smartphone's video capabilities that much, but I have tested it for the purposes of this review. 4K video looks okay. It's not going to be the best video camera you've ever had, but it's just the colors are a bit meh, a bit bland. You can also shoot slow motion, 120 frames per second at 1080p. But guys, this is just an average video camera. If you're just going to be shooting your friends, some maybe vacation, holiday videos, some short videos for Instagram. You may be wondering what the difference is between the Note 8T and the Note 8. Well, I just mentioned one. The Note 8T has NFC and it also has fast charging capability. That's the only difference between the two. So guys, I guess that's it. That's for my review of the Redmi Note 8T. In conclusion, I think this is such a good value phone. I just don't understand how they're making it so cheap. Obviously, this is limited in terms of what it can do in gaming wise. It's not going to play the best games at the highest graphical settings. Now, if you did want a phone pretty much like this, but you wanted to be able to play the best games at the highest graphical settings, then there is the Redmi Note 8T Pro, which does have better chipset and more RAM, so you can probably achieve that with that phone. But if you are just into casual gaming or just normal basic mobile games, then this is going to be fine. Everything else, considering the price, I'm super impressed with. The design is really good. The screen looks great, super responsive, very good multitasking. The cameras are decent. Some of the cameras are a bit average. The macro camera can just go away. I don't see the point. But apart from that, the cameras are pretty good. Again, you just have to remember that this is $180. It's very cheap. If this phone was $300, then I would say it's average, but the fact that it's almost half that makes this a really good option. I will do a quick comparison between this and the previous Redmi Note 7 Pro. If you want to see where you can get it, check the description. I'm going to be doing some more reviews of phones of similar capability and price range in the next few weeks and months, so check that out. Subscribe if you're into that. Let me know what you think of this phone, whether you think you would want to buy it, if you think it's worth it, if you think it's really cheap or really bad. If you disagree with me, please let me know. If you have any questions, then I will answer them. Just comment below and I'll get back to you. Until next time, I will see you later. Bye.